Good morning, good morning. Welcome to your March 31st, last day of March, Rotary Club of Ames meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And remain standing. We'll just take a few moments. Anyone know of anyone that could use thoughts and prayers from our Rotary family? Jack Swanson could use our thoughts. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll keep Jack Swanson and anyone else you can think of in your, we'll just take a moment. Thank you. You may be seated. We have a few guests today. Guests of the club, obviously, we have past District Governor Steve Dakin joining us today. Everybody wave at Steve. And then guests of members. Today, Jim Black has a guest. Oh, Karen's got the mic. You can introduce her, Jim.
My lovely wife, Mary Ann, who retired from the Research Park after 15 years at Iowa State.
Wonderful. Welcome, Mary Ann. Glad to have you. And Diane Bjorkland has a guest. She's over there.
Hi, I brought my husband, Bruce Bjorkland, who also works in the Research Park now at New Biologics.
Great. Welcome, Bruce. Thanks for being here. Love when you bring guests, always. So, reminder, as the weather gets warm and everyone's coming out of hibernation, don't forget to bring some guests here so we can sing to them, which we're not going to do today, if that's okay with you guys. Louie's not here. You don't want to hear me sing by myself. So, but we welcome you, and come back again so we can sing to you. And we have an exciting thing today. We're having 2 new guests join our club. So I would invite their sponsors to come up. We'll start what? Everybody come up, new members and your sponsors. And we'll learn a little bit about our new members, and then Alison Walter will give the charge for the club.
Take it away. Well, good afternoon, and I want to introduce you to John Clow. I expect a lot of you know him, maybe not, but I'm going to give you a little summary. John was born in Manson, Iowa, and he grew up on a farm. He graduated from Manson, Iowa, and did not have anything to do with the crater that was formed there 74 million years ago. He did go to Iowa State University and graduated in 1985 with a degree in speech and communications, and then spent 10 years as an off-camera reporter for Channel 5. A very interesting experience, but then he figured he needed to get a job, so he went back to school and got an accounting degree in 1995 and got his CPA. Served as the accountant for rain and hail insurance from 1995 to 2005, and was then the director of accounting from 2005 to 2019 for the Ames Laboratory. So he's got some good accounting chops. He has been doing private consulting since that time. But I think the interesting thing to remember is when he was in speech and communications and doing his stuff for news media, he also was very active with Actors Theater. And from 1985 to 1994, and he actually did perform the 90-minute presentation called Give 'Em Hell, Harry. Is that not true? So he could fill up some time there somewhere along the way. He is married in 1993, and they have 2 adopted children, Andy and Elise. I digress again to tell you that they adopted Elise from China, and actually both of them went to the Uyghur province and adopted a young Uyghur adoptee, Elise. Both are doing very well, and I just always was pretty impressed by this story. He still farms, he has the acreage, has bees, chickens, and horses, and he is also, with his wife, or he is on the board of Bethany Life, and also with his wife, very involved with Food on First in Nevada and equestrian therapy. Please welcome John. I think he's going to be a great job.
This should scare you when you give me a microphone. I'm going to introduce Mike Ewing. Mike joined Grandin Funeral and Cremation Care on February 1st as a general partner. And Kim and I are excited about this, and he comes to us from the Clarion, Belmont, Britt area as a funeral home operator. He was born in Britt, graduated from West Hancock High School in the class of '98. As most of you know, Des Moines Area Community College now has a mortuary science program, and he graduated from there in 2007, joining his father in the business in Britt, Kanawha, Clarion, purchasing that business from his father in 2014, and in 17, Belmont and Dow's. Like I said, Kim and I are very excited to bring him into our group, and we hope that you find him as welcoming and as warm as we have. Thank you.
Why don't you go? I'm going to try to talk to you, and if you're standing way over there, it's going to be all this way and this way. Okay, so I've been asked to give a charge, and this is a tradition that we've had in our club for a long time. Not all clubs do it this way, but it's a challenge to you as a new member. It's also a reminder for everyone out in the audience to rethink their commitment to Rotary. I am the District 6000 Rotary Fellowship Action Chair, and I think that Rotary Fellowships are something a lot of Rotary members around the world don't know about, so whenever I get the opportunity to talk about it, I do. Fellowships are groups that share a common interest. You can join a fellowship as a fun way to make friends, as well as explore a hobby or your profession, and it will really enhance your Rotary experience. A fellowship is a separate organization from a Rotary Club, but it's under the Rotary umbrella. They're open to anyone, whether you're a Rotarian or not. And they're formed on, like I mentioned, a common interest. It might be a recreational activity like 4x4s or RVs. It might be something related to sports. There's pickleball, scuba, golf, and skiing. I can't not mention that. Sometimes they're hobbies like quilting or doll collecting or stamp collecting, or they might be on your profession, graphic designers, lawyers, editors, architects, that type of thing. And then, of course, there's the ever-popular rum, whiskey, gin, wine, and beer fellowships. So you can always join those. And they just help you expand your skills, but also foster that fellowship of Rotary. There are nearly 120 fellowships on the Rotary website today. So no matter what your interest is, I bet you can find a Rotary fellowship to explore. And you can just go to rotary.org/fellowships to find that. Now, I mentioned skiing. I am also the international president of the Rotary Fellowship for Skiing. And we have over 500 members worldwide, ranging from more than 30 countries around the world. And this year, each year, our main event is to plan a ski week. We were in Steamboat, Colorado recently this winter, and this upcoming year we have ski weeks planned for Sun Peaks in British Columbia, Canada, Nagano in Japan, and Lac Jours in Austria. So if you're a skier, I invite you to join, but I just invite you to explore the opportunities of Rotary outside of this club. We are an international organization, and Rotary Fellowships are a great way to do that. So thank you, and welcome to Rotary. We're glad to have you. Thank you.
Okay, well, exciting stuff. Always love to have new members join us. A couple of additional announcements before we get to our speaker. The 2024 grant recipient, one of our grant recipients was Kathy Pinkerton with the Salvation. Yeah, I was just going to introduce her. Come on up, Kathy. From the Salvation Army.
Okay, so I'm Kathy Pinkerton with the Salvation Army. I'm going to turn it a little lower. And I have 5 minutes. I don't even think I'm going to take the 5 minutes, but I don't want you to think that diminishes in any way how excited we were to receive the grant and how much good the grant did. So our goals were to provide $20 Hy-Vee gift cards to folks who needed culturally specific meals. And that's, for most of them, that was the halal meat. And those were Hy-Vee gift cards. So 90 families were able to get those. We also purchased 9-quart soft-sided freezer bags. Folks that are unhoused can use our pantry on a daily basis. Whether it's winter, their stuff could freeze automatically if they're in their car or outside, or if it's summer, we need to be able to keep things cool, so we purchased those. So 30 households received those. And then we were able to get 2,130 pounds of microwavable meals and pre-made sandwiches. Usually those are club sandwiches that come frozen, and then they can use our microwave. Those are also generally for the unhoused households. And so because we were able to get that through the Food Bank of Iowa, our goal had been 100, we were able to help 193. So those are the types of things that we helped with. Then the next I have are some pictures. So this is what our coolers look like on a not so good day. We glean food, so we go to Come and Go, Walmart, and Fairway each morning, and you can see they're fairly empty at the moment, so that's why the grants that assist our pantry and getting things from the food bank really help. But then you can see this is, well, you can't see very well, but the freezer is full of microwavable things. There's frozen egg patties, there's some Hormel meals. I know there's pizza pockets in there, it's just hard to see. So those are what the dollars purchase. And then the microwavable cart, which has things that don't need a can opener, although we do provide can openers, but so like pull-top fruits, there's some microwavable bacon, that's very popular. Goes with the eggs. And then you can see, sort of, the white sign has the Rotary logo, and so that's how we acknowledge Rotary. And when folks sign for the gift card, we have them sign, it also acknowledges the Rotary, so that's how we acknowledge you. So we were able to serve quite a few people with the grant, so we really appreciate it. Thank you. Does anybody have questions, though, before I sit? Like, if you don't, that's fine. Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Kathy. We always love to hear where that grant money goes towards. And next, we'll have Lisa come up and introduce our speaker today.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am excited to introduce Alison Doyle. Alison joined the Research Park in 2008 and has decades of experience in business development, public relations, marketing, communications, community and event building. During her tenure, she has helped hundreds of organizations, including multinational companies, find the perfect space to move their operations forward and establish pathways to a robust partnership with Iowa State University. In addition to having a wide network of connections and aims in Iowa State business communities, Alison has specialized knowledge that aids organizations in streamlining the often complex process of selecting a location, executing a lease, and building, expanding, or relocating operations. Please welcome Alison Doyle.
This is quite tall. Thank you so much for having me. I've had a number of people pull me aside and ask where Rick is, so we will just get that out of the way from the offset. Rick is traveling, and so in our office things roll downhill, and that's why you get me for today, but I am thrilled to be here. These are one of my favorite things to do, to come out and brag about all the great things that are happening at the Research Park. As I look around the room, though, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that this is a community endeavor, and there are so many faces that are sitting out in the room, some of whom I'm sure that I haven't even met yet, who have had a hand in our success. So I just wanted to start by saying thank you to all of you. I met Ken today, who I'm sitting next to in the back of the room, and he told me that he platted North and South Loop Drive as a civil engineer many years ago, and it was fun to share that we're working on the next platting that's coming as well. So kind of the way we're going to roll through things today, I'm not going to spend too much time on the slides because I want to leave time at the end to talk. We just have 20 minutes here today for the presentation, but I did want to provide some context and some updates about where we're headed and some of the projects that are in our pipeline, because everybody always sort of wants the scoop on what's next. Also sitting in the crowd today is Warren Madden. Warren is one of the people, if you did not know, who helped found the Research Park back in the day of 1987. So he is sort of where all of the institutional knowledge of the place lies. And then we have Marianne in the back, who is also one of our former employees. So very fun to see everyone today, and thank you for showing up. So to level set, Research Park is part of the economic development and industry relations ecosystem at Iowa State University. This has not always been the case. We were kind of off on an island floating around by ourselves for many years, and Mike Crum endeavored when President Leith was in leadership at Iowa State to raise the profile of economic development within Iowa State University. And he came up with a plan that would put all the organizations that you see on this slide in one building called the Economic Development Core Facility, which was to be located right in the middle of the Research Park. And the idea behind that was that we were all doing great work for companies throughout the state of Iowa, but we didn't know each other. We weren't generally communicating or collaborating with one another. And so it was frankly a big experiment to see what would happen if they put us all in one place and made it very, very easy for anyone to stumble in the front door of that facility and get help. So we've been working at this now for a number of years. And today, there's not a day that goes by that we're not collaborating with everybody in that building in some form. But the Research Park itself has been around a lot longer than that. So it goes back all the way to 1987, as I mentioned earlier. We're a 501c3. Rick would kill me if I didn't stand up here and say his favorite fact, which is we are the highest paying property taxpayer in Story County. When you aggregate everything together, we're a not-for-profit, but we're also a not-for-loss. So the money that we collect from our tenant companies is what pays my salary and pays for our team and helps us to do the great work that we do. throughout the community, but also throughout the state. So when this research park started, it was a little bit different than a lot of them. Most of them are you're going to find in urban environments, research institution, which we have, but nearly all of them also get started because there's a large anchor tenant that starts the community and then they go from there. We had corn when we started this one, and we did not have an urban core. So it was started with the idea of doing it different and leaning into startups, in particular pulling intellectual property from the institution, wrapping those founders up with resources so that they could be successful, and then sending them out into the wild to see what they could do. And so it's taken a long time for us to grow. John Russell's around here someplace. I gave him a hug when he came in. You know, when you go to a bank to borrow money to build a building for a startup company, most bankers don't really like that endeavor. So it took a long time for us to have enough critical mass in the research park so that we could leverage the assets that we have so that we could continue to make bets on startup companies. So much of the success that you see today is large brands that you would recognize, international companies, but they're not there necessarily because one day they decided that it was a great idea to just move to Ames, Iowa. They're there because they acquired one of our startups and made a choice to stay here and grow here because there's assets here that make sense for their business. So startups still very much a core of what we do. We also serve Iowa-based companies. So Iowa's a manufacturing state. Most of our manufacturers throughout the state are in rural locations. Lots of them have a couple of things in common. They're trying to create smarter machines, either the product that they manufacture or the manufacturing line itself, and they're trying to recruit talent to do that, oftentimes in an environment in the rural parts of the state where it's hard to get students that are coming out of a STEM program at Iowa State to take a job. And so we started beachhead offices at the research park with the idea of, could we help you retain your interns? It was a singularly focused goal. Give us one person, one office. Let's see if this works. It worked, and so then we started rubber stamping that model with other companies from throughout the state. Now we have about 15 of them in the research park and lots of others that are doing this on a smaller scale. Back when we started doing this, now I'm going to start sounding like an old curmudgeon, it was enough for us to retain the interns that were going to Pella, Iowa for the summer and just keep them busy during the school year. A couple years in, it switched to, what are you doing for juniors? I'm not getting enough pipeline into my workforce. I need to know what you're doing for freshmen and sophomores. And now the conversation is, tell us what you're doing with elementary and high school and junior high kids to get them to come to Iowa State. It's not enough. We still need more help. So the research park's been able to differentiate ourselves by continuing to move with the market where the market is because we're in front of these folks every day. And so it's not like we have some secret sauce that we know about. It's just that we're partnering with these companies to help them grow. And we hope to continue to stay ahead of the curve in that area. As I mentioned earlier, the large and the multinational companies are largely at the research park because they acquired one of our startups and chose to stay there. So there are a lot of exceptions to every rule. John Deere is one of them, has a large presence at our research park in 2 separate facilities. The difference for them is that they brought a startup to Iowa State Research Park to scale it and have stayed and then have continued to grow from there. But we have had 5 companies that got a start in the research park in some form that have gone on to IPO. And you cannot find a community in the United States of the size of Ames that can boast that claim alone. So we feel like we're doing a decent job, and it's really up to all of you and all the support that you're lending us to help us continue to grow, because this is a community and, frankly, a regional economic endeavor. So markets that we serve, Research Park is not for everyone. We align perfectly with the strengths of Iowa State University. The thing that's lovely about this is that when the state started investing more heavily and getting more focused around where they were going to spend their economic development dollars, our joke was that we already had the bullets on our slide because they align perfectly with Iowa State University's strengths. So precision and digital ag, bioscience, bio-based chemicals and products, vaccines and immunotherapeutics, we already had pockets of expertise here at the research park before the state started strategically investing in those areas. And then tech broadly, we've always had a nucleus of programming talent running around the research park that goes all the way back to the old engineering animation days, frankly. Folks who have chosen to stay, who really like doing startups, and when they get to a certain size and scale, they spin out because they're interested in making another go at it, and that's been very good for us as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this slide, and then I'm going to jump ahead to what's coming, because otherwise we're going to run out of time, and I want to give you all some time for questions here as well. But all in today, we're at 550 acres. We're up over 1 million square feet of developed space. To give you a frame of reference, when I started at the research park, I moved into one half of building number 4. We're super original. We chronologically name them in the order that we build them, even if they're like all over the place. So don't ever drive through and think that because you saw one, that the next one's gonna be 2, because that's not really how it works. We're up to 22 buildings. Of those in our portfolio, we own and operate 12 of them. So Rick has a line also that he says all the time: if you've seen one research park, you've seen one research park. And as we network with other partners in research parks and innovation campuses throughout the world and largely throughout the United States, I think I personally have come to appreciate more than any one other thing the foresight that Warren and his friends had when they stood this thing up, that when you came into our research park, you could do whatever you wanted. So what does that mean? We can build a building for you to suit and put you on a long-term lease. You can start in a multi-tenant building on a month-to-month lease that will tear up as you grow. You can come in and buy a lot and build your own building. We can have a developer come in and develop a building for you and keep a ground lease in place. That flexibility has, frankly, as we scaled, been our secret sauce. How we get a leg up on Purdue and Champaign-Urbana, both who have research parks, both who have campuses similar in nature and strength to ours, is that. I could go through hundreds of deals and hundreds of conversations that we've had where that is the thing that gets the company to our research park. So kudos to Warren and the team who were very intentional about that strategy, because it served us very well over the years. So we're up to about 2,500 people that work in the park every day, 400 or so students at any given time working in our companies, which we're super, super proud of, and then 140 companies. So it's not a small endeavor. Of that portfolio, probably 2/3 of those companies are startup companies still. So working really hard to keep the ecosystem alive. And now that we have this nucleus of large companies there as well, we've turned the narrative into something new and different about innovation. And these companies can come in and actually scope out who might be their next acquisition target right in our research park, which, 10, 12 years ago, that was aspirational in nature, and now that's happening as part of the work that we do every day, which is pretty fun. So I'm gonna skip ahead here. Here's a smattering of logos. I put this up in every presentation. This is not inclusive by any means, but it's just to indicate everybody will see something on here that they recognize in terms of large company, but there's a whole bunch of names on here that you probably never heard of in your life as well. And the future of our research park really depends upon us nurturing and growing those folks. My colleague Mike Roof is sitting in the audience today, and we partner with one another every day as well to try to grow the startups, to provide them resources so that they can become the next Merck or the next Boehringer Ingelheim. And it takes a lot of people to get that work done. So here's what we're selling. I said no more boring slides, but here's one more. Every day, and I think it's interesting just to frame to folks like what happens when someone comes in the door and wants to talk to us. I get to catch all the leads for the institution and for the research park, so these are fascinating conversations. First 10 to 12 years that I was at the research park doing this, everybody came in the bottom 2 circles. So they had a pickle that they were trying to solve, perhaps in their research and development pipeline, and they knew there was someone at Iowa State, if they could just find them and we could marry them up, that they could solve that problem. Or they needed mice for testing, or fields for field testing, a meat grinder, a gene sequencer, something that was expensive to purchase, but that they couldn't afford on their own, or the business didn't justify use of it all the time. We could hook them up fee for service and make something happen for them, and maybe give them a small space at the research park. About 10 years ago, maybe 12, the conversation radically started to shift to talent. And in the past, it wasn't like we weren't talking about the fact that we're graduating thousands of students every year. It was just, frankly, that our career services colleagues were doing such an awesome job with our career fairs that they were like, no, we got this handled. We're getting good people from Iowa State. We don't need you for that. But then the conversation shifted. Now 99% of the conversations that I have with companies that come in the door for service from Iowa State University are about talent. Who are you graduating? What do they know? How can I get at them, and how can I get at them sooner? From our perspective at the Research Park, this makes my job as a salesperson, frankly, a heck of a lot easier. I joke that before, you were sort of kissing toads until you found your prince, right? We would have to line people up with different researchers. It would have to align with the researcher's portfolio, with the timing, the speed to market, what the company was trying to do when. Very, very hard to make that sort of serendipity occur, whereas now we're graduating 6,000 students a year, lots of them in the areas that these folks are after, and so if we can come up with a good strategy, then all we need to do is just continue to replicate it to find success. So, fun place to be. We're still trying to send them off in the other bubbles as well, and where the magic happens is when they're playing right in the middle. So I talked about innovation hubs. This is something we're very proud of. All the names that you see up here on the slide are doing this slightly different. But in addition to the talent hubs, they're also looking at their innovation pipeline. What are the struggles? What are the things they're looking at 5 and 10 years out? And can they accomplish those by leaning into our research portfolio at Iowa State? We also take a good deal of pride in trying to create a sense of community. You know, we joke that if you're in Silicon Valley, that you're going to get in a cab or an Uber or go to a bar and you might meet someone who could fund your company. Fairly unlikely to happen here, and so we need to create opportunities for people to collide with one another and meet so that that sort of serendipity can occur. So as long as I'm at the Research Park, I'll be fairly committed to keeping those events all open and free to all. And so you don't have to be a Research Park tenant to come to them. In fact, we need folks like yourself to come and help some of these young founders and entrepreneurs to be successful. So now I'm going to pivot hard into the fun stuff, what's coming and what are we building. You've probably seen some of these. We've got 5 tenant builds in our pipeline. We're pulling housing out of the ground as part of this live, work, play environment in 2 different areas of the Research Park now. With that will be some commercial opportunities to provide additional amenities for our tenants, which we're excited about. I'm told by all the people when I go out into the wild, we need a good dive bar. We'll see if that comes to fruition. And then we're also partnered with the athletic department on building SciTown. So we have a couple things going on. Our staff is lean and mean. There's 8 of us. And 4 of us generally think every day about the engagement side of the business and how all the companies are tying into the institution and increasing their footprint. And then half of us think about building buildings, making sure that the lights turn on and the toilets flush. So not a lot of us to go around, frankly. So I'm going back a little ways. We opened the Pivot Bio building in November of 2023. This is meant as a customer success center. So Pivot Bio envisioned a facility where their farmers could pull into the high bay of this facility. They could jump out of their truck while they're retrofitting their equipment. They would throw it in the back. They could come into a training facility, learn about how to use their product, and then drive out the other side and essentially create impact right away. The thing that you might notice if you ride or drive through the Research Park is that building looks a whole heck of a lot like the Vermeer building. And the reason for that is that the Pivot Bio folks lived in a multi-tenant building. They grew very fast. We moved them into the second floor of the Vermeer building temporarily, and they hadn't even really got in there yet, and they said, can we just buy this? And we were like, well, it's Vermeer's building, so probably not. But we could build you your own building that looks just like the Vermeer building. So that's why that's there. And this has proven a model now where we've got multiple conversations happening with multiple other companies about, can we do something similar here as well? Additionally, we're partnered with Iowa State Athletics on moving tennis to the research park. So sort of a strange combination, but we're always looking for things to engage our community and keep people busy. And so it's fun for our research park community to have sort of adopted the Iowa State tennis team. And if you've only seen this facility on the outside, you must go on the inside. It looks pretty ugly on the outside. The big bubble, it reminds me of one of those things that you store corn in next to the railroads. But when you get in there, it's actually quite nice. And there's a really nice area to watch the team play. And then outside, there's some clay courts as well. We're going to do some pickleball and some fun things as we move forward. A couple people asked me about this facility earlier, the Alliant Energy Ag Innovation Lab. So this particular facility is located south on University. So it's the furthest south that we have built so far through 3 roundabouts on the south side of Ames Fitness. This particular location houses Iowa State's most successful research team that works with industry partners. They have 26 products that are sold globally that have Iowa State IP in them that were developed by this particular research team. 40-some others that are in various stages of development. So from our perspective at the research park, pretty important since we're sending lots of work their way to put them in a space that makes sense. They were formerly at the BioCentury Research Farm, and a great deal of this team was living in construction trailers as they scaled and growed. We were also working with Alliant Energy and have Alliant in a couple different spots in the research park and started a conversation around some of Alliant schools to serve the folks that were in the rural parts of the state, and particular manufacturers who could benefit from some of the services that this research team provides, frankly. And so Alliant stepped to the table and invested in the facility with naming rights, and that allowed us to scale the facility to a point where there's some communal and shared spaces in there where we can do ag education programs and create a center of gravity, not unlike what we're trying to do with the core facility, but in this facility for ag-centric activities, which is very exciting. If you've not been in there, I would highly encourage you to come. We were talking about possibly doing a tour at some point, and we can absolutely do that. A lot of the high bay is sort of off limits just because of the nature of the IP work that's happening, but we're just getting started. I came from meetings this morning about this facility and how we're going to scale in a couple different ways that aren't baked enough to talk about real yet, but this is a gem, and we think it's the only one in the United States that's like it. So what else is coming? We have a building coming out of the ground, First Strand, right now, an engineering firm. So their model works similar to how the Workiva model works, where you can have a job at the Ames location, and then you could go to Colorado or any of their other spots. And so this will be a primary hub for them. They're recruiting students out of Iowa State. They actually work on some of our construction projects as well. And it is an absolutely gorgeous facility that is coming out of the ground now and already has a phase 2 planned for it as well. Then we're building housing. So I mentioned this earlier, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. This is a partnership with Hunziker. And so across the street from the core facility, there will be 3 separate structures that have retail spaces on the bottom and then high-end apartments on the top. The 3rd structure is a standalone tenant facility. Those are all coming out of the ground now. And then along the ledge of the Tedesco Environmental Learning Corridor, there'll be side-by-side condos, which you can see here. And then at the second roundabout, as it goes behind Workiva, there used to be a property back in there a long time ago that has been removed now for many years. There'll be a couple of apartment buildings. So all in, we're looking at about 125 units. We've been getting asked to do housing at the research park since I started. And we didn't have the zoning in place to make it happen. This was something that Rick gladly took on when he started being our president, and it took a long time to get to the point where all the stars aligned and we could do this. So we're very excited about it. We are anticipating that these will primarily be occupied by folks who are working in the research park, but they will be open to everyone. So here's a really bad map that's really hard to see, but this shows our 550-acre box. So I didn't want to move into questions without talking about what's coming to the extent that I'm able. I'm under NDA on 2 large projects that are looking pretty good. As you can see on the south end of this, so on the left-hand side, that would be University, and then the other road that you're seeing on the right-hand side is Riverside Road, so airport's right on the other side of that. The building furthest to the south is the Alliant building that I just shared about. We're working on a nice project that will continue down that university corridor, and then another project that would fill in some space back up on the Riverside Road side of things as well. And we hope to be able to be in a spot where we could make announcements about those within the next 6 months or so. And then Jamie just gave an amazing presentation about SciTown that you can look up and watch the video where he lays out the philosophy here, but it was kind of hard in that presentation to see some of the renderings. And so I've been throwing these in a couple of my decks just to walk through what's coming. SciTown is moving forward in a hurry, and there's 8 structures associated with SciTown. We get the question often about the research park's engagement in this, and I always answer in the same way. Frankly, if we're not involved with it, the research park could fairly quickly become a poaching ground for SciTown if we're not careful. And so one of the things that's been very, very important to us is creating a seamlessness, in particular with the office space, so that those are research park tenants. Those are people are going to be treated exactly the same as the folks who are in the research park, and there's going to be all kinds of activities that we can work on together to create a sense of community here. So this is part of the research park. So on the north end, there's a hotel, and then there's the Sukup Atrium, again, our atrium, amphitheater that I'm very excited about. When I was at college at Iowa State, live music, the joke in my family was that I was not at college, I was going to concerts. And that was a big part of our community back in that day. And so we're hopeful that that will help us to create a continuum of music and bring some additional activity. And then what you see in the other 6 structures, up on the Jack Trice end, there's McFarland Clinic. On one side, the restaurant on the other, and then 2 SciTown Suites buildings and 2 office buildings, all with retail on the bottom. So I often also get the question about why McFarland Clinic? And so we'll throw that out before we jump into the Q&A, and I just flash through some of these pictures here. And I'll say that I go way back in this community, and when we built the cafe, when I was working with the restaurant group that built that, McFarland was one of the first community members that stepped up and created the next thing in Somerset that brought the traffic to the area that frankly made the cafe go. And similarly, when we started to bring amenities to the research park, this was a new thing. All we had ever done is offices. And so we made a bet that if we could get the restaurant, taking a page from the book in Somerset, frankly, same people to do a restaurant there, that then they would attract for us the next set of amenities and the next partner. And again, it was McFarland Clinic that came to the table, made that investment for it to grow. So here you see McFarland Clinic, upstanding member of our community, stepping forward, making this investment in SciTown, which frankly for us from a development standpoint, gave us the traffic counts that we needed to create a more palatable project for a developer to come in and own the risk. Because as an institution, we were not taking it and our balance sheet couldn't handle it. So there's your reason for McFarland Clinic. It's going to be a beautiful facility, and we're excited about all the ways it will tie into the institution as well. The hotel picture you can see here on the right, if you've been to Nebraska's hotel, it's similar to that. Here's a picture of the amphitheater, and then the suites and the office buildings. And then there's all these programmatic opportunities that will happen in the spaces in between that we're all pretty fired up about as well, that we can just tie into the research park and the activities that we have going on daily. And then finally, I'll just leave with one final thing. When Rick and Jamie flew up to Titletown to talk about this concept before it was frankly even real, one of the things that the Titletown folks said to them was that if they had a research park that was as evolved as ours was when they started Titletown, that they would be so far ahead of where they are now. And so I think it's important to keep in mind that a lot of the economic opportunity that will be tied to that development is humming right along on the south side of Highway 30 if we can just keep it going. Thank you.
I'm Mike Kittrell. Can you tell us what the total economic impact of the research park has been over the years, not just the startups, but the ones that have moved on?
Boy, I sure wish I could, and I cannot.
I hope somebody can do that, because I hope our legislature is listening to about how successful this is.
I sure hope so too. When Dave Swenson was at Iowa State, he had done an economic impact study that they renewed every few years, and the last one that they did was about a year after I started. So, I mean, and I moved into the first half of building 4, and now we're at 23. So it would be pretty remarkable to get another one done. The limiting factor has been that we don't ask our tenants often for much information, so when they do, they sort of clam up on us. But we're very interested in figuring that out for the exact reasons that you mentioned.
Randy Olson, Iowa Limestone Producers Association. Picking up a little bit on that question, how much state involvement is there now in the research park? I suspect Iowa Economic Development's very interested in what you do, but are they involved at all in the projects specifically or more generally in the overall effort?
Great question. So when the research park was founded, originally the state was one of the original partners in that. Today our organization's about a $13 million organization, and we get about $450,000 of state funding a year. My team is at engagement side of the business, and half of my team is in dual roles. So $450,000 is not much. Currently our funding is zeroed out in the legislature. We don't know if it's coming back. We'll be okay if it goes away, but what will get cut is my team if that money goes away, because those are the services that we're providing that keep the tenants fat and happy, frankly, with spending money at the institution. So that's sort of one part of it. The other part of their involvement is with our companies. So there's a long line of startups and companies that receive state funding that are in the research park. So that 450 number is a little bit deceiving in that way. We see it as our role to try to help with that. We partner with Dan Culhane's organization at the Alliance quite frequently to line up some of those funding opportunities for our companies from startup, and the state's done a really nice job of working with us to create a continuum of funding. So when the federal money dries up from proof of concept, there's some state money you can go after, and then ideally you would be evolved to a point where you could apply for a little more federal money if it's a long tail sort of endeavor, and then there's a little more state money you could go after. But it is a bit of a struggle. Our team is about a third of the size of most research parks for scale.
Jim Lohr. Glyphosate has been a farm chemical, and they're now finding there are a lot of problems with Parkinson's disease and others. We're going to need a new generation of farm chemicals. Are you prepared, or how are you preparing for that at the research park? I'm sure you'll be part of it. How large a part do you expect to play?
So I tend to get to see a lot of trends of who's coming in the door. And I think what I have seen in the last 24 months or so, inbound 98% of what I'm seeing is in ag and in ag tech in some fashion. Now that could be chemicals, it could be plants, it could be machines, it could be vaccines. I mean, ag tech's a pretty broad umbrella, but we are seeing more and more activity in this particular area. We're also working on a project right now to bring fermentation, large-scale scale-up fermentation facility to Iowa State University. It will be a research park project as well. That would enable us to serve on a much broader scale some of these companies who have done proof of concept for some of these alternative chemicals, who have gone into the valley of death, as we say, where they've perhaps gotten to a point where they can make it work at, I don't know, 1,000 liters, but when they need to make the jump to 10,000 or 20,000 liters, things become problematic for them, and then the company dies. We would be able to serve those folks as well. So my sense is that if we can continue doing this work, that we will continue to see more and more of those folks coming.
Tammy Coolback from Stevens Auditorium. Quick question. How many of your tenants rely on federal funding, some of those grants, programs that may or may not be being cut?
I don't have a number off the top of my head. I do know that we have lost 2 so far due to federal funding freezing up or not coming in the fashion that they would have wanted. In both cases, we just tore up the lease because there's not a whole lot that we could do or they could do. I don't know that that would always be the case. Most of the folks that, when they get into the research park, they've spent a fair amount of time in our programming on campus and leaning into different areas. So hopefully it's not all dependent upon federal funding at that time, but there still are a fair number of them, in particular the science-based ones that are trying to get a vaccine launched or something like that. They're going to be very heavily reliant on it. There's a lot of wait and see right now happening, kind of people just tapping their feet, waiting. But we'll see. 2 so far.
Alison, you might comment about the SBA, which is one of your entities out there. They support a lot of these companies.
Yeah, so in our economic development core facility, the organizations that were on that first slide that are housed in there, one of them is a small business advisory centers. And so there's a statewide network of those in every state in the United States. Then they provide free business support and counseling. Fun fact, Iowa State provides the contract for the state of Iowa, so owns the contract for that administration of all those offices. There's 15 of them throughout the state. But the regional one runs out of the core facility, as well as the administration runs out of the core facility. And so those folks are located all throughout the state, and they're bringing folks in to solve problems as well. The director of that, Lisa Shimkat, had been with Iowa State for many years. She just took a job with the federal SBA. And so we're hoping that we can lean on her when things get rough if we need to, now that she's in that spot.
So this may be too complicated to be more than just a quick answer, but can you tell us a little bit about intellectual property? When an Iowa State professor finds a new process and starts it up, how much does Iowa State get from the proceeds of that versus that individual professor? So who owns that intellectual property that comes out of Iowa State?
It depends. So, I'm going to start swimming out of my swim lane a little bit, but the intellectual property people at Iowa State also live in our building. So as an undergrad, if you create something when you're an undergrad at Iowa State, you own that IP. Once you become a graduate student or once you're on faculty, the institution owns that IP. So we'll kind of put that on a shelf as a starting point. So let's say that you have something, someone like Mike Roof or I stumble across your lab and say, hey, have you ever thought of doing something like that? Then there's this whole process that a faculty person would go through to determine what's the best path for that. So are you going to license it? Are you going to create a startup company? If so, what do the rights look like for everybody to do that? And there's different ways that you can structure the deal, and there's different ways, frankly, that the university would like to structure the deal in order to have a little bit of revenue coming back in, or in order to get it to come out into the greater market. So that's kind of the Cliff's Notes version of it. And then when a company comes in and they want to get at IP that has been developed by a professor, that's a dance that you do as well, right? So there's kind of 3 buckets that have gray as well there. And one is that the company would come in and they would say, I want to work with you, but you're not publishing that. I get all the rights to it. That costs a lot. So that's kind of tier number 1. Tier number 2 is, I want to work with you. You can publish, but you can't publish any of my secret sauce. And you can turn around and you can use your secret sauce with anybody else in a different adjacent market, but not our market. That's kind of another bucket. And then there's the other bucket of, I just need you to develop this, and I don't really care who has it, because I just need it for this little thing. And that's another bucket. If that helps.
So, Mike Ruff, I've had an opportunity to be a tenant with Research Park and now work with you directly. And one of the things that, as we recruit companies to Ames, is, and they typically are looking at other locations as well, but one company recently summarized it very well. After a full day of meetings, they said, this is the only place we visited that the answer is yes to everything. And so, you know, can we build it? Will you build it? Can we lease it? Yes, yes, yes. You know, can we get funding for National Bank, Story Construction, Dan Culhane, Debbie Durham? I mean, we've created a really novel and cool ecosystem that all funnels through Alison and her team, where the answer is always yes. So kudos to you.
Thank you. We good?
Well, thank you so much, Alison. I think I say this every time. We have a fantastic speaker about how lucky we are to live and work in a community that has something like this as well. And people like Alison, because we grew up together, and now our daughters play on the same basketball team, and now I get to listen to her at Rotary speak, so it's incredible. We are a leading sponsor of Raising Readers, so when you're finished, Alison, we'd love for you to sign this. It will go to a 2-year-old at their well check in your honor, so thanks again for everything today. I left my phone because that's where my head's at today, but it's okay. I'll paraphrase my kindness quote. It's really simple, so thanks, John. I think it's today. Oh, try to be a rainbow in someone's cloud. Goes well with that we're hopefully done with snow, and spring hopefully is here to stay. So please, everyone, stand and join me in the 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Pivot.